Why? Is that not an appropriate conversation to have? Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the Stokastic.com MLB Live before lock show. A little early slate action. We got a main slate tonight. Two big slates. NBA action as well. Donovan Mitchell out. That sucks. Not that it would have made a difference. But anyway, happy to have you guys with us. We're talking baseball. What time's this start? 1:10? Yeah, 1:10 Miami, Detroit. Actually got two games at 1:10. Pittsburgh, Milwaukee as well. Doesn't look like we have any real considerable weather to be worried about either. So we can dive straight into this one. I'm Dave Loughran. That's Matt Belman. What's up, dude?
Nothing, man. Just real quick on the Donovan Mitchell stuff. Yeah, it sounds like he's not going to play. And the worst thing about this, and I was saying this I don't think I was doing a show with you. I think it was in the afternoon. If they somehow use this as an excuse to keep JB Bickerstaff and to keep this team together, I just think that's a mistake. So yeah, it sucks, but they weren't going to win this series anyways. I mean, we know that.
No, they stole a game, and that's it, you know. But it's been some fun postseason thus far. I really thought the Pacers were going to win yesterday. I did. I thought the Knicks were worn out, but that ended up not being the case. Anyway, we got some baseball to get into, about an hour to cover this, so we'll make sure to do exactly that. Got the Sims run. I know Jordan did as well. Top stacks, top pitchers, all of that good stuff ready to rock, locked and loaded. So let's dive into it. By the way, this might just be me, Matt. Maybe it's just like recency bias. It really feels like we've had some peculiarly a word? Peculiarly? Probably is. Probably. It was very difficult to say. How about oddly? We've had some oddly low scoring slates where, or I should say low scoring games. the last couple of days, I've just looked from top to bottom at all these games, tracking my lineups. And it's like, yeah, the Braves pop off for 7, a couple of other teams. But you've just seen so many games that are like 1-0, 0-0 in the 6th inning lately.
I was thinking that exact same thing last night. I've thought it a bunch. It's just true. A lot of people are saying there's a dead ball right now. Maybe there is. Scores are down all over. Injuries have already hit hard. Some teams have already been hit hard by the injury bug. Maybe that's playing into it. I'm not sure, but you're 100% right.
Well, we'll see. Just looking at the totals for today's early games, 8 between Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, 8.5 Detroit, Miami, 7 between Garrett Crochet and Patrick Corbin, 8.5 Brandon Pfaadt, Andrew Abbott, Arizona, Cincinnati, 7.5 Rockies, Padres, Michael King on the mound, Austin Gomber on the other one, and then Brian Wu and Alec Marsh, 7.5. So yeah, again, some pretty low totals, but it doesn't matter. We've all got the same slate to work with. So let's go ahead, make it happen. We'll jump straight into pitch. Oh, before we do, if you guys wouldn't mind, take 1 single second, tone for your sins here on Wednesday morning. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Much appreciated. Goes a very long way. Only takes a second. That's all. And if you hate this show, hit that thumbs down. Make sure to do it twice, though. All right, let's go. Jason Gordon said, please tell me you like Miami bats today. We'll get into all of this. Don't worry. But we'll kick it off with some pitching. Highest owned pitcher. I don't think this is going to come as a shock to anybody. Michael King getting a lot of ownership. Man, yesterday, Dylan Cease got off to a insane start. Like struck out 4 of the first 5 batters he faced, slowed down a little bit, ended up being fine, but coughed up 3 runs late, got out of the game with 8 strikeouts. But Michael King's 8,800 in this same matchup. The Rockies have a 2.8 run implied total. He's 61% owned on DraftKings right now. On FanDuel, Michael King, wait, hold on. They have the very early and the early. Michael King on the early slate is 60% owned at 9,600 on FanDuel.
Yeah. So, man, it doesn't feel good rostering a Michael King that's this popular. But I was going to say this when you talked about how low the totals were. There's really low totals everywhere and not even good pitching. Like there's a couple okay pitchers on this slate, but no aces or anything like that. King is, right there with Crochet as the top strikeout guy on this slate. And he's in a really good spot at home against Colorado. I'm uncomfortable with the ownership, though, not going to lie. He's got a 3.67 ERA. His expected is 4.24. That's not insanely bad, but he's coming in at like 60% owned. The problem is, and you can't just say, I can't just say I don't like King and then not say who I do like. And there really isn't much to like as far as pitching goes on this slate. Do you see it the same?
Yeah, it's clearly one of the reasons that he's getting as much ownership as he is. Like Garrett Crochet is getting 31% at $9,600. Brandon Pfaadt against Cincinnati, relatively popular himself. Same with Brian Wu against Kansas City. So I wouldn't say it's terrible. I don't think it's awful. I mean, look, you're probably not going to Trevor Rogers, Austin Gomber, but I gotta ask you, like, it's funny because the 2 guys down here, 5% and 2% respectively, as far as ownership goes, Corbin and Rogers, both have good matchups. Do you have any interest? And then we can get into some of these more expensive guys in playing just like the heavy contrarian spots with a Corbin or a Rogers, because Rogers has been no good, and Corbin is Corbin.
If you're multi-entering, I think you have to. I think it's just an easy way to get, different than the field with, guys that clearly are worse than the pitching up top. But the pitching up top is not that great at all. Like you look at the top guys tonight compared to last night, even excluding Sonny Gray, you had Gilbert, you had Sonny Gray, you had Chris Sale. Like all those guys are far superior to the guys up top today. So it's just a casualty of the slate why King is getting so much love. For me, playing limited lineups, tough for me to want to get different there. I do think the same mantra applies that like it is an easy way to get different if choosing between the two, I think it would be Corbin. I know that you're probably getting more ownership on the Tigers than you are the White Sox, but that's more or less negligible. Corbin at least has been decent this year. The White Sox have not been good against left-handed pitching, and it's the White Sox. They've got one of the lower top stacks on the board. That just tells you all you need to know about the White Sox team. Usually when a team's facing Corbin, they're like auto at the top. Not today. So I think it would be Corbin. Just not sure it's needed. Like there aren't even that expensive bats on this slate. I think it's an interesting way to get different, but that's all it is.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my exposures right now. Let me just favorite my lineups. Favorite them, go to pitchers, early slate. I'm still getting a ton of Michael King. Here's the thing. Like, this is why getting away from King to me makes less sense than it normally would. And I want to know if you disagree here. First of all, I'm above the field despite that crazy ownership. Right now, I'm getting like 80%. He's 8,800 in this spot. Like, understandably, he's not as good as Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease was 11K yesterday. Michael King is 8,800. Coming off, by the way, a stellar performance against the Dodgers, right? Like he's had some really nice starts against better teams. Milwaukee, when they couldn't miss, he went 7 2/3, 10 Ks, 1 earned. He's had some phenomenal starts this season. The 8,800 to me just seems like you're going to be hard pressed to get away from that. And if you are, you're doing it just to get away from ownership and not because he's overpriced or even like, I know he's negatively leveraged in the tools, but around 40% top 2 pitcher probability. But like I said, the Sims factor all of that in, including ownership, salary, leverage, and all of that. And Michael King still profiles for me as the best, far and away, the best pitcher on the slate.
I don't disagree with you at all. The reason that he's popping through the tools and the Sims, and I'm not surprised that the Sims are just feeding him to you, he projects as the top scoring pitcher of any pitcher going today or tonight. He's the top overall projected pitcher on the hill today. Projected for almost 4 more fantasy points than the next guy on this slate. That guy being Crochet, who's also more expensive than him. Whenever you have a dynamic like this, like he's underpriced considering, the slate around him. I will say though, to your point, the only reason you'd get away from him is the ownership. I don't think that's crazy because Michael King is still Michael King, unproven. He's had some phenomenal starts this year. He's also been less than stellar in a couple starts. And he's one of these guys where I feel like if he's got his A stuff, he can be really good against anyone. We saw it against the Dodgers. If he doesn't, anyone can get to him, as we saw against this same Rockies team in Coors. I know that that's Coors and this isn't in Coors, but still the same pitcher versus the same lineup. So we see this pretty much eye to eye.
It's pretty crazy. Right now, I have a lot of Michael King, a good amount of Brandon Pfaadt, and 20% Garrett Crochet. And then outside of that, on this 6-gamer, I don't have anybody north of 8% at pitcher.
Yeah, I was going to say Pfaadt kind of stands out a bit as far as projections go. So I'm not surprised by that one at all.
And, we talked a lot extensively about Michael Wacha yesterday against Seattle. The truth is that Seattle team is just like more times than not this season, righties going up against Seattle, good or bad, are just going to have some really good starts. It does lead me to someone like Alec Marsh. He hasn't been too bad. He even has 6+ strikeouts in 2 of his last 3 starts. One against Baltimore, he was dominant, and one against the Angels, 5 1/3, 1 earned, 7 strikeouts. Only run was on a solo shot. So, like Alec Marsh, sorry. Here's the problem with Alec Marsh. Yesterday, Wacha was what, $6,800 or something, right? He was, $6,800, and he was excellent, by the way. He got the win too. 6 innings, 1 run, 7 Ks. That's Seattle. Problem with Alec Marsh, he's $8,000. So I don't want to say you're paying a premium because he's been pretty good, but you're kind of paying a premium on Alec Marsh today. And I don't know how comfortable I am with that.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with it either. I'll say this. His numbers look really good on paper. 2.53 ERA, 264 WOBA. But again, you look under the hood a little bit, 4.24 expected ERA, .328 or 328 expected WOBA, excuse me there. Clearly not as good as what his actual numbers imply. Actually look a little bit like Kings. It's just that's the type of slate it is. You're going to be able to pick holes in every pitcher. And you're right. It almost seems like insert pitcher against Seattle or insert right-handed pitcher against Seattle. And more often than not, it's going to work out, regardless of who that guy is.
Yeah. Richie said expensive pitchers been so bad lately. Stick with mid-range and cheap pitchers. Yeah, it's so tough to say.
I mean, Chris Sale was pretty good last night.
Exactly. Chris Sale was fantastic last time out. Dylan Cease 2 starts ago had like 45. I think it's definitely recency bias because like Zach Wheeler prior to last start was basically automatic. You know what I mean? A lot of these guys had been really good. I get what Richie's saying just because it feels that way. And like, yeah, Sonny Gray was not good yesterday. Sonny Gray's had 2 really rough starts in a row now. But I don't know. I don't think you could say Logan Gilbert was decent. 6 2/3, 3 earned, and 7 Ks. Not great. But yesterday, yeah, if you went to like a Michael Wacha, who else yesterday? Shout out to Sean V.
Joe Ross.
Cal Quantrill. Yeah. Joe Ross was good.
You know,
go ahead.
Baseball will baseball. Like this last night was a perfect example of it. We had 4 really, really elite pitchers up top. Chris Sale, Dylan Cease, Logan Gilbert, Sonny Gray. Sale was the best pitcher on the slate by a lot. But other than that, Michael Wacha, Joe Ross, and Cal Quantrill all outscored Cease, Gilbert, and Gray. And that's just what, you know what I mean? There's no predicting that.
And one guy we talked about yesterday too, Rodon was good too. He went 6 innings, 1 earned. I think he had 6 Ks. Like that was a real nice start and got the win. So you were getting that at what, like 8K or something? So yeah.
He was the 3rd best pitcher on the slate.
3rd best? Okay. Who was well, Sale was number 1, correct?
Wacha
number 2. I like
that. Killed me. It killed me because I used a lot of Gilbert, and that 3-run homer in the 7th inning completely flipped the script on Wacha getting the win, the runs, etc. But Wacha was phenomenal, so it was a good call by you.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, look, at this point, I'm trying not to overthink certain things. If it's a righty facing Seattle and they're just not total outright dog shit and they're not overpriced, I think I'm willing to roll the dice. I mean, honestly, even Marsh, I don't mind getting a bit of today. He's been good. Like if an 8K Alec Marsh, let me ask you and you guys in chat, if an 8K Alec Marsh, just knowing what we know about Seattle, they have a 30% team strikeout rate against righties. If a 30%, or sorry, an 8K Marsh ended up being the pitcher you needed on this slate, where you've got like Gasser, Martin Perez, Casey Mize, Patrick Corbin, Andrew Abbott in a tough spot, Trevor Rogers, would you be that surprised? Because I don't think I'd be shocked at all if Alec Marsh ended up being the top pitcher on this slate.
I don't think you could be surprised. I mean, considering who the other options are, like, no. And the matchup, we've seen it too much. Seattle is striking out against righties at like a 28.5% clip. I mean, they're just, again, they've got talent and they've got upside when they put the bat on the ball. They're struggling to do so right now.
You know what's most interesting about this Seattle team is that oftentimes, you know how we talk about like ownership getting skewed by heavy ownership on 1 or 2 players, right?
Yeah.
You can see that with K rates too. You know, like when Joey Gallo's an everyday starter and you've got another guy in the lineup that has a really high K rate, they've got like 5 or 6 guys that are hovering in the 30% range.
It's everyone. Like everyone is at least a little bit in the red. Like to your point, it's sad.
Right. There's like what, maybe one or 2
Rojas. That's it.
Yeah. Right. So that just to me always makes it that much more interesting. I think Marsh is maybe I'm just being dumb, but like 13%. He has, by the way, he's positively leveraged in our tools as well.
That's the
15%
other
top two
thing.
pitcher. What's that?
That's the other thing. Like all these pitchers have holes in them, and Marsh isn't getting ownership despite this matchup. You're definitely talking me on him, not gonna lie.
Should end well. Honestly, I'd be okay with it though. Like if I had 20% Marsh or so, maybe like I'd be get a little bit over the field on Alec Marsh. I think I'd feel pretty good about that. Plus, Seattle, what do they have? 4.4 run total? Almost seems high.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, again, I think that King Crochet is going to be very, very highly owned together, each apart. And I get it because of the other options on this slate. But there would be a lot of slates. Yesterday's, a number of slates, or if you just put these guys, Crochet and King, in the middle of them, Crochet wouldn't be getting any love at all at 9,600. King would be getting some because of the matchup, but that's it. Like these guys are really, really popular just because of the other options. When you get slates like that, it makes me want to at least look at the other options.
Me too. What about some of these other options? Like Brian Wu against Kansas City, Brandon Pfaadt against Cincinnati, Crochet against Washington. I think we've already kind of exhausted everything that needs to be said about King and Marsh. What about those guys in the middle? And what about Robert Gasser as well? He's getting almost 20%.
The guy I can cross off for myself pretty easily is Brian Wu. I think he's good, and all these pitchers are comparable as far as talent level goes. But we saw it last start. He was good, but got pulled after 64 pitches because of like tightness. They said he's fine, but he's just not going to throw enough pitches, I think, to warrant that ownership. I think he could be fine, and that maybe is all you need on a slate like this because there just aren't great pitchers today. Excuse me. I just the pitch count and the ownership is something that I'm not really buying. Thought is too cheap, probably all things considered. He's got good strikeout stuff. We saw it against who else but Seattle a couple of starts ago where he struck out like double digits. I don't love the matchup against Cincinnati, but I don't hate it either. And then Gasser was really good in his last start. That came against St. Louis, so who knows what to make of that. He's expensive at 8,600 is my problem here. Hard for me to prioritize him over Crochet or King. And he's also picking up ownership. So I'm probably out on all these guys except for Pfaadt.
Okay. I'm actually getting a decent amount of Brandon Pfaadt right now, which surprised me a little bit. But sometimes I'll trust the tools. I think I'm going to ROI boost Marsh a little bit. Aside from that, though, I don't think I'll do anything crazy. BD said at some point a trend becomes the norm. Seattle's a good matchup. Yeah, right. And the thing is, like, Marsh or anyone could go out there and get shelled by Seattle, but it doesn't mean you don't play them guys against them next time. Matt, you say it all the time, like baseball is baseball. So yeah, good matchup is a good matchup. It's a good spot with strikeout upside, and it's not going to work out 162 times, but probably more times than not for sure. Chase said, you guys are talking me on the Julio Rodriguez. If anything, Marsh did not do well last time against Seattle. Julio 4 for 6 and a homer. I like that. Yeah, I mean, sure, but that's also one game. Could happen again, sure, but it doesn't mean much.
Yeah, that means very, very little to me, especially with a hitter like Julio who gets very hot and cold. Had that 4-game stretch last year with like 17 hits. That might have come in there. Like that just doesn't mean anything to me. And the point isn't that Marsh like is impervious to getting hit here. It's Alec Marsh. Of course, Seattle has upside, but you look at 2 slates ago, Brady Singer was too expensive. I didn't really like him, but he was kind of popular and he was not good. He gave up a bunch of runs. He threw like 60 pitches in the first 2 innings, but because of the matchup, he struck out like 6 or 7 and ended up with 10. There's a baked in floor when you get a matchup like this, which is, silly to ignore, frankly.
Also, I just looked through. I don't think he hasn't even faced Seattle this year.
Yeah, he's probably talking about last year.
Well, when Rodriguez couldn't miss.
Yeah, like yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different circumstances for sure.
Yeah. I don't really look into BVP for what it's worth, though. Maybe there's some spots where it's viable, but you'll find conflicting beliefs on BVP for sure.
I'm
Anyway,
kind of in the middle. I don't think it means everything. I don't think it means nothing. You just can't quantify it. And in something like that, in such a small sample size, you're talking about one game, that means nothing to me.
yeah, especially like you have no idea if Marsh didn't have his right had the right stuff. Yeah, I think pitch type is more important than BVP, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could go countless examples of guys with good BVP having success, but it works the other way too. Ty France yesterday was 9 of 15 off Waka, 0 strikeouts. Was 0 for 3 yesterday against Waka. Pitchers change, circumstances change. Again, I don't think it means nothing, but it certainly doesn't mean as much as some people want it to be.
Are there any other pitchers that are necessary to get to today? Like, who can we write off entire? I don't like to use the word entirely, but like, who are you writing off right now?
Rogers is tough to get to given his current form. Gomber. San Diego's been bad against lefties, but I'm not going to play Gomber on this slate. I think those are the two main cross-offs. Guys that I'll struggle to get to are Martin Perez, Andrew Abbott because of the matchup, and Casey Mize. I guess I understand Mize just because he's in a cushy spot at home against Miami, but he's not particularly good. Similarly owned as a guy like Marsh. You could quibble between those two, but I think I'd rather get to Marsh's upside. So I'm probably out on Mize, Abbott, Perez, Rogers, and Gomber. I still don't know what to do with Corbin.
I feel like I'd probably end up just on more White Sox than Corbin.
Yeah, same. Because it's at the end of the day, it's still Patrick Corbin.
Yeah, it's still a guy that has been no stranger to coughing up power. This season, not so much, but like, does that last? You know, this is somebody that for 3, 4, 5 straight years has allowed a lot of power. The White Sox are no good, don't get me wrong, but they still have, a 4.2 run implied total for the White Sox is like 6.5 for the Braves. You know,
But
it's a decent spot. They're inexpensive. Brian Wu is the one to me that is most intriguing. Like Crochet, King, yeah, pretty obvious that we're going to be getting a decent amount of them. I do like Marsh at 13% positive, positive leverage there. Maybe a little overpriced, but the matchup kind of warrants it. Brian Wu's 8,400. So you've got Marsh, Gasser, Wu, King, all of them in that same price range. Where would you rank him? Like, where would you prioritize him among those 8K pitchers today?
Wu, you're saying?
Yeah.
It's tough because the ownership's already there. And man, like on one hand, I get it because he feels like the safest option. He's pretty good. The Royals aren't great. Good ballpark for pitching. I just don't think the upside's there at that price, especially against a team that doesn't strike out a lot. I know they did yesterday. They didn't even strike out a ton yesterday. So yeah, I don't love Wu here. Just considering the ownership, I like Thought more. Man, it's tough because I do think he's safer than guys like Gatser and Marsh, but I don't think he has their upside. So I think it's kind of a what are you looking for in your pitcher type of deal.
So if you had to rank your 3 favorite pitchers right now, what is it? Because for me, I honestly think it's King, Crochet, and Marsh.
I'm going to say Thought over Marsh, but I think they're close.
He's up there too. Like those are the 4 guys right now.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Like I'm looking at my exposures to pitchers, and I could be wrong here. Yeah, it's like all those 4.
Yeah, makes sense. Those are the 4 that stand out to me as well.
I suppose maybe you'd end up getting like in large fields with a lot of lineups, maybe some Andrew Abbott. He has the strikeout stuff. We know that he's good, but I think it was you that pointed this out. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you probably know where I'm going here. Arizona against lefties has been an entirely different baseball team all season long.
Yeah, I'm not really looking to use basically any lefty against Arizona. I will say about Abbott, though, like you can make the argument that he's the best pitcher of the bunch in this group, and his underlyings are still really good.
He's good.
Like a 2.88 expected ERA, 274 expected WOBA allowed. Like, yeah, and he's not getting love. It's a brutal spot, but it kind of goes back to what I said. You could pick holes in everyone here. He would be the one guy out of that group I said I wasn't playing that you could make a strong case for. He's also the most leveraged pitcher in our tools for whatever that's worth.
It is crazy though. Arizona this year, 512 plate appearances against lefties, league best 141 WRC plus, league best 371 weighted on base average, and a 182 ISO, which is behind only Baltimore and, ready for this, the Oakland Athletics. But the other thing that kind of stinks is 17% K rate for Arizona versus lefties. They don't make it easy against southpaws. Now, I think Abbott's a reasonable price, 7,800, but I'm not getting to a lot of Andrew Abbott. I'm really not getting to a lot of these cheap pitchers. The cheapest I'm getting to with decent exposure is Brandon Pfaadt at 7,600. Like not Casey Mize against Miami, even though that's not a bad spot. It is Brandon Pfaadt that I'm getting the most of there.
Yeah, in Arizona, it's not often you see Corbin Carroll not in the lineup and think that's bad for the pitcher. That's absolutely the case here. First off, he hasn't been great this year. Certainly not great against left-handed pitching. You got Randall Grichuk in the 2-hole here. Zona sending eight righties against Abbott. McCarthy, the only lefty. It's scary for sure.
Have you looked how bad Cincinnati's been against righties this year? It's actually worse than I thought.
Cincy against righties?
Yeah.
That makes me like Pfaadt even more.
So they do have some power, right? 152 ISO. You know that there's some bats in there that can do some damage. They're 11th in ISO against righties. That's about where it ends for them, though. Honestly, not to mention, this is a team, Matt, that has real injuries. Like this is a team that is not fully healthy, right? So when you factor that in, you consider they have an 84 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year. The only teams worse than that, Colorado, Pittsburgh, and the White Sox. Like those are rough numbers. They have a sub 300 WOBA against righties too. The only teams better or worse, Miami, Pittsburgh, and the White Sox. And they have the third highest K rate in the league behind only the Seattle Mariners and the Colorado Rockies. So there's something to be said. I was wondering, man, a lot more Brandon Pfaadt than I think. The more I look at this, the more I dig into the numbers, and the more I look at it based with his price point and the fact that he has a 22% top 2 pitcher probability on DraftKings, 18% on FanDuel. He's getting the second most ownership. It actually does begin to make a lot more sense. And Cincinnati with a 4-run implied total, that's not going to scare you.
I'm definitely in on Pfaadt here. Everything you said. And then also just looking at his numbers, his 4.60 ERA doesn't look very good, but his 3.37 expected ERA looks a hell of a lot better. I'm in on Pfaadt here for sure. I think he might be my favorite pitcher on the slate, ownership and price considered.
Interesting. Okay. Francisco, yeah, we'll have live before live for the main slate for sure. And one more, Matt. I think we touched on it a little bit, but we had a question and we have some time here. But Chill once asked, what about Gasser? Do you have any additional thoughts on him just in that range?
He's a highly touted prospect. Hasn't been great in the minors, but he's shown some upside, was very good in his last start. He's overpriced for me. Actually more interested in some Pittsburgh bats, but I don't think he's that much different of a play than Wu and Marsh and the guys in his range. He's just a guy for me here, though.
Want to talk some bats?
Sir.
All right. Before we do, guys, did Tom win yesterday again in NBA? I feel like he did. I feel like he
saw him win a couple days ago.
I feel like he did. And he uses the straight Sims tool on that as well. For some reason, I know he won 100K like 4 days ago, but I'm pretty sure he had another win yesterday. Either way, we're running a promo for you guys if you want to dive in. And by the way, I had some questions coming in on Twitter and in my DMs and just on Twitter in general, like on my feed, from you guys yesterday asking about like, what do you do with NBA lineups for the Sims tool, MLB lineups and all this? Like, are you doing it right before lock for NBA? What are you doing with ROI boost exposures? I know Greg gets them a lot too. We're always happy to answer any questions you have. So don't think like that if you were to check these tools out that you're just on your own. We have tutorials. We're open books. The Discord is wide open that you can jump into. And right now, $19.99 for the entire week, NBA Sims. That, by the way, that's not just the main slates. That's the showdowns. And these showdowns, DraftKings is doing 100K to first on the showdown slates on days where there's 2 games and a 400K main slate. So the contests are massive right now. Sims tool is absolutely, you see it on the screen, all of these images on the screen. It's dominated for our guys, And by our guys, I mean you guys. Absolutely dominated for NBA, particularly in the postseason, MLB too. But you want to check it out. The entire week's less than $20. You're getting the Sims ownership. You're getting the post contest simulator, late swap tool, boom bust tool, player projections, premium Discord lineup generator, everything we have for NBA on the site. You got it for the entirety of the week, not just for main slates, but the showdowns as well, which is important since the Sims have been crushing for showdown. But I think you'll love it. And look, if you're not into basketball, you want to just check out baseball. We've got a week, a month. If you wanted to just do the data or the Sims or the lineup generator, all the links to all of that, the promo and everything for baseball included, links are in the description and in chat. And like I said, always hit us up in Discord or on Twitter if you have questions before or after you jump in. We'd love to help you guys out. So we'd love to see you over there too. Come do it. Join it. Jump in. Be like Jake DeWitt, who's in chat right now. 17K, like the day after he signed up on the Sims. Be like Jake. You know what I mean? Anyway, let's talk some bats here. So we talked pitching. A lot of good pitching options in a weird way, right? Like there's a lot of viable pitching options. I don't know if I'd say a lot of good pitching options, but from a top stack probability, here we go again with another one of these kind of condensed slates, only 6 games. There's no team that just runs away from the pack, Matt. We've seen this so often lately. I think it makes it better, actually. And maybe it makes it more difficult because then you can't just fade the highest owned stack.
It's almost like individual hitting ownership matters more than stacks on slates like this. And we're kind of seeing that in ownership. Like, I think when you look at the individual hitting ownership, it looks like San Diego and Milwaukee are going to get the most love. But I just don't think ownership really matters on full stacking here. I think that all these teams look pretty similar outside of Washington and Colorado, with Detroit and Arizona the clear top 2. But even those teams, like, I think you can poke holes in them. Certainly Detroit is Detroit. And then Arizona, Abbott is good. So kind of both sides to the story there. And then between San Diego and Washington, or the White Sox, in our tools, there just isn't much to separate them. So ownership is similar all over.
It really is. But I think in that same respect, like you could make an argument for a lot of these teams today. I was a little surprised that Arizona had the highest top stack probability and the highest total. A little bit surprised by that. I thought it might have been, honestly, Detroit. I know they're not particularly good, but I thought Detroit would be up there. Like San Diego's sitting at 4.5 against Gomber. Gomber hasn't been that bad. And Seattle, I don't love against Marsh. What are his power numbers this year? The cool
It's
thing
crazy
about
to me we still don't have a Pittsburgh lineup yet.
I know. The cool thing about FanGraphs, the Pittsburgh's been doing that shit, man. They did it yesterday too. What, like an hour before or less than an hour before? Come on. Cool thing about FanGraphs is you can just pull up the probable pitchers page and sort all of that by the stats you're looking for. The dumb thing about it on Fangraphs is to start this season, I had to hit Adam up and be like, yo, I can't remember where the probable pitchers page is. And he goes, yeah, I couldn't either. It just took me like 20 minutes to find it. For some reason, it's under the scores tab on Fangraphs. Doesn't make sense. But if you go under there in the scores tab on Fangraphs, the probable pitchers, you'll see all of that. And, you know, somebody like Alec Marsh is giving up very little power, 0.56 home runs per 9 on the season, Matt. It's a really low number. King has allowed a lot of home runs. A bunch of them have come in bunches. Are you interested in stacking? Maybe this is the biggest question of the day. Are you interested in stacking the Rockies? I mean, I know Greg, and I've learned a lot from Greg's DFS prowess. Hopefully all of you guys have. Yeah, Swaggy, Tom is on a heater. Did he win yesterday, Swaggy? I thought he won again. Sotek said Josh said he did. Yeah, so there you go. But one thing that Greg does often when it comes to single entry stuff, like he's always looking for that great leverage spot. And it's, you know, it's not always going to work. Sometimes you're just going to look dumb and the pitcher is going to go and have the game that ownership expected him to have. Other times they just aren't. And while Michael King is very good, and he's by far my highest exposed pitcher today, he has had a few games where he's coughed up, like he has 2 games where he's coughed up 3+ home runs. Is there any, and I'm not even saying there is, right now I'm getting no Colorado, but I've got to ask you, especially since you do a lot of single entry and 3-max stuff, is there any inkling there that you might, or any desire to get to Colorado?
Yes and no. I think the desire lies just in King's ownership. I do think though that the best way to play this in like smaller field stuff is just not to play King as opposed to playing the Rockies. I think more often than not, even when King is not great, the Rockies still don't get there in this ballpark and other stacks are better than them. Sure, as our tools indicate, there's a 3% chance of them being the top stack, but you're right about him giving up the power. The only thing I'll add to that, though, is both those games where he gave up a combined 7 home runs came against the Dodgers and Phillies. Right. And the Rockies aren't those teams. So, like, I think they could get to him here. I don't think that's that crazy. They've gotten to Cease and he destroyed Vasquez. But there's enough bad pitching on this slate where I think that one of these other teams just is better than them. So that's how I see it. But whenever you get a pitcher like Michael King projected to be so high owned, yeah, there's merit just in that and using the offense against him if that's how you want to play it.
No doubt. And yeah, I don't think I get there. Plus, they're still the lowest scoring team on stack score in our top stacks tool. Like we still don't really have anything that looks good. I have a couple 3-man Rocky stacks. That's pretty much it.
You look at last night. They got to Cease a little bit, but they still weren't like the top stack on the board. And Cease was really good because he had 8 or 9 strikeouts, but you take a couple of those Ks away and it's like, okay, Cease is just okay. And the Rockies are just okay, which I think is what you hope for if you don't play King here.
Pretty much. You know, our tools love Detroit and I like Detroit too. I mean, against Trevor Rogers, it's a pretty nice spot. They're, from a pricing perspective, you're not paying a premium on them. They are getting owned, but so are other teams. There's like 6 teams with very similar ownership, all around 10%. So it doesn't concern me all that much. Trevor Rogers gives up some power, 17% strikeout rate. This just looks like a clearly good spot to me. They're our highest team in the stack score column over in the top stacks tool. The one I want to talk about, though, Milwaukee against Martin Perez. This is the type of guy that every time you look at Martin Perez and you're like, oh, it seems like a decent spot to stack against him. He just kind of does what Martin Perez does. Maybe he'll give up 1 home run, is never terrible, is never great, but he's just been the same guy for so long.
Yeah, I hardly ever stack against Perez, not because I think he's amazing, but because he's a pitcher's pitcher and he doesn't get shelled that often, but people like to stack against him. I think it's the allure of like the non-hard throwing lefty, going against a bunch of righties. But I'm not going to play a popular Milwaukee here. And you look at the individual ownership, 4 of the top, 15 highest owned hitters on the slate are coming from Milwaukee. Contreras, Adames, Joey Ortiz, and Gary Sanchez. So I don't know. I'm not going to play it, or I don't want to play a popular Milwaukee here, even though, again, I don't think Perez is particularly good or anything. Just not a spot I want to chase ownership.
I have an interesting one for you. What about Pittsburgh against Gasser? Not a lot of ownership. He in his first start, he was excellent, right? Just cruised through that, carved through that St. Louis lineup. But he's also not somebody with a hell of a lot of major league experience. And we've seen these type of guys in the past get tuned up from time to time. Pittsburgh's not in Pittsburgh. They're in Milwaukee. Interesting spot, in my opinion, honestly. Like, Gasser's good. I mean, at least let's say this. We think he's going to be good. But is there an argument to be made here that in his second major league start, we should be looking at a low-owned Pittsburgh team that isn't overpriced?
Definitely for me. I mean, I've been on Pittsburgh a little bit recently. I'm stubborn. So, yeah, I have interest in going back here. Kind of just a play on Gasser's inexperience and ownership than on his talent. You're right. He projects to be good. He doesn't project to be like some ace, but he was one of the main pieces in the Josh Hader deal. He's certainly got a good arm. But Pittsburgh's one of these teams that's just not getting love. I kind of like their lineup better against lefties, obviously, except for O'Neal Cruz, who will presumably be towards the bottom today. But yeah, I'm interested in Pittsburgh quite a bit here. And then it doesn't hurt that Gasser's getting ownership. I think they look really good. And if you're using like a king crochet combination, I think you want to be looking at stacks like Miami or Pittsburgh, teams that aren't getting love.
And you mentioned Cruz probably being lower in the order with the lefty-lefty matchup, but they've got a lot of righties in this lineup. I mean,
yep.
Reynolds being a switch hitter, Cruz probably the only lefty in this lineup today.
Yeah, Connor Joe on fire right now, mashes lefties. Sure, we'll see Edward Olivares in there. Yeah, ton of righties here. So I do like Pittsburgh quite a bit. I don't think they look like any different than Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's going to be significantly higher owned. So I like Pittsburgh quite a bit.
So you hinted at it, but oh, here we go. Pirates. McCutchen, Reynolds, Joe, Cruz, Olivares, Gonzalez, Cholo, Bart, Taylor. Oh, so no, Cruz batting cleanup.
So no Grandal, obviously.
No Grandal.
That's it.
That's it.
Basically a normal lineup for them. Because it's Olivares instead of Sawinski, which is what they normally do against a lefty.
Yes, correct. Yep. That's it. So, but Cruz batting cleanup in this spot. With the
I called this yesterday. Take this for whatever you want. Mostly talking to the audience here. I called Nick Gonzalez homering yesterday. He had scalded the ball the day before to not much success. I feel similarly about Triolo here. He's been right on the baseball. Not much success, but you can kind of tell when guys are starting to get locked in. Certainly no guarantee he's going to do anything today, but cheap, unowned, in a decent spot against a lefty, I'll take my chances there.
Any other bats we haven't talked about? Well, Miami. We had questions in chat, and we want to answer these 2 questions from chat. If you guys have any, we still got a little bit of time here. What about, yeah, we have several questions from Miami. What about this Miami team against Casey Mize today? Like he's not giving up power, but that doesn't mean a whole lot to me, given that throughout his career, his brief career, but still 226 innings pitched, he absolutely has. He's generating strikeouts at a far underwhelming 16% clip. That's not good. 397 xFIP, 358 FIP. All of those numbers look perfectly reasonable. but I think the power probably starts to come at some point. I think that ground ball rate probably comes down a little bit from where it was. And it's not like he's generating a ton of soft contact. So yeah, look, Miami stinks, but it's a 6-game slate. And to the point that Matt and I have made, I don't really think there's a single stack that stands out. Like, okay, yeah, Detroit grades out the best. It's still Detroit, right? Arizona grades out well. Andrew Abbott's still good. Like, just looking over all of these, even Martin Perez can go out there, give up 2 runs, none of them on home runs, generate a bunch of ground balls. And like, you know what I mean? I think I could go down the whole list on every pitcher. Shit, even Patrick Corbin, because the White Sox bats are so bad as a collective. I don't think there's one spot that I go, man, or 2 or 3. Like, how do I get away from those to get to Miami? So probably if there was ever a time to play, Detroit bats and Miami bats and Pittsburgh bats, it's probably today on the early slate.
Definitely. I mean, man, I like Pittsburgh slightly more than Miami, just from like a gut feel, whatever you want to call it, perspective. But our tools say Miami's a slightly better play. Now it's so close that like you're, pulling, picking through a needle stack to find the differences, or a haystack to find a needle, I should say. But
I was gonna say,
yeah.
dude, I'm not looking to pick through a needle stack. That would suck ass.
I guess depends on what you're looking for. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hay in a needle stack. Shit, that's a new twist.
Yeah, Miami and Pittsburgh look about the same to me. I slightly prefer Pittsburgh, but I wouldn't argue with you to choose Miami there. Mize isn't very good, doesn't strike out a lot of guys, and it is a ballpark upgrade for Miami. So don't hate it at all.
There's one other thing I wanted to talk. Oh, Jordan, do me a favor. Mark asked any pick 6 plays you guys like for baseball. Go into Odd Shopper, screen share it, Jordan. Pull up the pick 6 optimizer, throw it on the screen for Mark or really anybody else that's looking to. Just awesome tools. Awesome tools, man. Use them every single day. We have a mass entry tool now for Odd Shopper, Matt, where you can go in and be like, generate bets, and it'll generate a bunch of bets, and then you just click bet, and it loads them all into the sports book for you. It's awesome, dude.
That's nuts.
Like, do you know how much time that is saving people?
Yeah.
And me? Yeah, you can go in, select however many bets you want, select your sports book, your leagues, your bet categories, boom, generate bets, whoop, straight up. And then it's just on there. Yeah, it's sick, man. It's like taking our kind of DFS approach, and all that with the sims or, optimizers and streamlining it for betting. It's been sick. You guys got to start betting, man. Jump on Odd Shopper. Shit is awesome. Plus, highly affordable. $49 for the entirety of the month with the premium Discord, with the market-based, EV tool, the parlay builder, everything for prize picks, underdog, DraftKings pick 6, you name it. The mass entry tool, which is just nuts. Links down there. You ever want to check it out? I know it's a DFS show, but yeah, Odd Shopper Premium right down there in the description. Sick. But Sotex, you guys are addicts. No, man. Look, I'm trying to streamline processes around here. If anyone, Sotex, I think, because someone like you would appreciate that, Give us time to live our lives and then sweat the games later on in the day. I'm getting like 80 to 100 bets down a day. Easily. Anyway, I think we talked about most of this. If you guys have questions, hit us up before we go. Are there any other stacks you want to hit on?
Not really. I do think San Diego is going to be, and they're projected to be the highest owned. I don't know, man. Like, Gomber's not a trash can. San Diego's been pretty preacher against left-handed pitching. Now, I get it in the sense that it's Tatis and Machado. These guys have, tons of success in their career against left-handed pitching, but a little bit surprising at the ownership San Diego's getting.
The last one, because we just kind of glossed over it earlier in the show when we were talking about pitching. I think we've covered a lot here. Nicely done by you and myself. What about the White Sox?
I think I like the White Sox more as mini stacks, especially the top of their lineup. Pham, Andrew Vaughn, Eloy. Struggle to get there as a full stack. They haven't been good against lefties. And they grade out pretty low in our top stack tool. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're that much different than like the Miamis and Pittsburghs of the world, though. So I'll lump them in that group.
Favorite stacks, top 3?
I think it's going to be just ownership considered. Pittsburgh, Detroit, Miami.
Pittsburgh, Detroit, Miami. I feel like I'm probably with you on that.
It's really tough, though, man. You could basically say any 3 teams, and I think it was viable. You know?
I think I'll throw Arizona in just because our tools definitely like them probably more than I do if I wasn't looking at the tools. So I'll throw them in as well. But that's a tools thing, and sometimes it makes sense just to trust them. You know, like Alek Manoah the other day. I'm not sure if I would have gotten I was like 3x the field on Alek Manoah. I don't think that would have happened otherwise, right? It's just one of those weird, or matter of fact, who was it the other day that was just in a brutal spot and ended up having a phenomenal start, and the Sims were feeding us a ton of him. And I went, all right, if you say so. I forget who it was. It was like 2 days ago, probably, where it was just a pitcher in a really tough matchup. Like,
I know you had Brad at Paddock like a couple weeks ago against Boston. I can't remember who it was.
That was my own spot though that I was.
Oh, yeah.
You know what it was? It was Michael King last week against the Dodgers.
Yep. Sounds about right. Yeah.
Hold on. I'm just, so I don't lose my mind here. Let me. That'll drive me nuts.
If it was 2 days ago, again, I'm not sure if you played this guy, but it could have been Mitch Keller.
It wasn't Keller, but yeah, he had a nice game. I wish I could remember who it was, but it was one where like you kind of look at it and you go, I don't know about that. And then it ends up just, oh, you know who it was? You know who it was? Wasn't a crazy good game, but Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea
very good his last start.
He was in the tournament, the winning lineup, I think, in the mini max.
That was against Philly, wasn't it?
Yeah, against Philly.
Yeah, I used some Philly bats that game, of course.
Yeah, right. Anyway, appreciate you guys hanging out as always. Again, $500 deposit match on Sleeper if you're not there yet. Dynamic pricing up to 100 extra entry, and a free square for new users on Jaylen Brown over 0.5 point today. Plug that in, make some quick and easy money, plus get the $500 first match deposit bonus instantly, by the way. And, you know, be smart with your money. That's the easiest way to be smart with your money right now. All of these signups, really, just be smart with it and make sure that you're taking advantage of really every bonus and every promo that you can. It goes a long way, even if it feels like it takes a bit to add up. Anyway, thanks, guys. Good luck today. We'll see you back here. Main slate live before lock for NBA, and then we'll all catch you over there on playback. If you're not doing anything tonight and want to hang out, totally free, very fun, watching games, basketball playoff games tonight. And we'll see you back here tomorrow. Strategy show, bright and early. Peace.